This is J. Krishnamurti's talk with students in Florence, 1970.
What would you like me to talk about? Any suggestion? Perhaps we could talk about it a little later, after we have considered what I think is quite an important point, what is happening in the world. Everywhere there is fragmentary action. Each fragment thinking that it is colossally important. There is the scientific field all by itself, the religious field separated from the business world. There are wars, sovereign governments with their armies preparing on the assumption of defense. There is generally a great chaos in the world, terrible anxiety, a great deal of sorrow. And given this factor of confusion, violence, fragmentation, and when you consider all that, with their nationalities, with their separate religious beliefs, dividing man against man, looking at all this, I wonder what you would do what you would consider a total action in all this. An action that will correspond logically, sanely, healthily in whatever you are doing. Seeing this fragmentation in the world, there must be an action which will be a non-fragmentary and therefore total, complete action. We don't know if you have thought about it at all. What should one do given the conditions that are in the world, both in America, in Europe, and in Asia? What is one to do? Mere violence against the established order is really a form of retrogression. Because going back to violence as a means of changing society, the structure of society, is very primitive, unintelligent. Because invariably, every form of violent action brings further violence. It's a very primitive, rather animalistic response to a very complicated issue. And violence, as is going on in America, in certain parts of Europe and Russia, denies freedom. And without freedom, in the deep sense of that word, not mere political freedom, which is a very small affair. Freedom, not from something. Freedom to perceive the confusion as it actually is, and out of that perception, action. And what is the action? I think this must be really quite a very important question. What is one to do in this world where there is social injustice, tremendous prejudice, color prejudice, black and white and all the rest of it, political differences, the communist versus the capitalist and so on, the division which religions have brought about in the name of whatever they call God, and there is always this thing called war. And looking at all this, what are you going to do? Are you going to take one fragment and devote your life to that fragment, whether it's business, whether it is scholastic knowledge, or science, or mathematics, or become a businessman? What is the imperative action? I think one has to ask this question. Perhaps we have never asked it, or even considered it, because in ourselves we are fragmented, broken up, contradictory. In ourselves we are confused, uncertain, not very clear. But this question must be put. And answered seriously, not flippantly, not intellectually, because intellect doesn't solve this problem. They have tried it. The philosophers, the theologians, the scientists, intellectually, theoretically, speculatively, have tried to answer this, what to do, and they haven't answered it. What to do about the total way of existence. I don't know if you are following what the speaker is explaining. Given the factor that the world, both outside and inside the skin and outside in the world, in the environment, there is conflict going on. Each man tearing at the other man. And what is the action which must be completely harmonious, non-contradictory, which is not regional, not limited by a particular form of political philosophy or belief, because if you follow a particular political form of philosophy and bring about a physical revolution, you will invariably end up, as it has happened in Russia, a bureaucratic bourgeois regime, tyrannical, oppressive, and no freedom at all. And if you merely pursue a political, a philosophical theory that has no validity at all in daily existence. So seeing all this, any serious man, any intelligent man must ask this question. What is an action that's not fragmentary? That will be harmonious and will be applicable in whatever movement of life. Have I made my question clear? What would be your answer? How to act? Because behavior, conduct is righteousness. And if conduct is contradictory in itself, that is, behave in one way, think another, and feel something quite the opposite, if that takes place, the confusion will increase as it is going on now. So what is the action that will be totally harmonious? What is the way of life, living, which will be whole? Because we are concerned with living, not with theories, not with principles and ideals, but a way of living in our daily life, which is not distorted, which is not imitative, conforming, and yet be so completely free and in that way act, because life is action. cannot possibly avoid it. And what is the way of living that is never in itself contradictory, and therefore bringing conflict within oneself and therefore outside of ourselves? Now, how do you answer such a question? Will you look in the encyclopedia, ask your professors, turn to the priests or the politician? Or go to the psychologist? Or Lenin or Marx or somebody? How do you answer it? How will you find out? Because this is a tremendous crisis going on. And you perhaps may have to enter into all this confusion. How will you answer this thing? Where will you find the answer? Through somebody? Through a philosopher? And so on? Where will you find it? Go and search. Oh, there is no one outside you to answer this question. There is no authority, no book, no priest. If you follow somebody, then you merely become further imitative entity. So what will you do? Where will you look for the answer? If nobody can answer this question except for yourself, and you have to answer it, because you are responsible. The world is you, and you are the world. And if the world is in such fragmentation and confusion, and if you respond to any one of their fragmentations and comply and conform, then you're adding further chaos and mess to the world. So where is the action that is total, harmonious, not contradictory, that's never has the quality of fear and violence? I don't know if you're interested in this. Because this requires a great deal of energy to find out, a great deal of application. a great passion. Now, can we discuss this together? Can we go into it together? What is the way, or what is the action that will be complete, whole, not contradictory? Action means the doing, not having done or will do. Action is always the active present. Right? Like love is the active present. It's not I have loved or I will love. So if the mind is the storehouse of the past, it will translate action in terms of the past through memory, experience, knowledge. Isn't it? You understand? Action means the doing now, not I will act or I have acted. The immediacy of action and our brain cells, please let me add here, I'm not a professor. I don't read books about all this, thank God. Because generally what we do is quote somebody. We are second-hand people. And we think very terribly clever we can do that. Very intelligent. Because we can quote the psychologist or the scientist or say compare this or with that person. So our brain cells themselves are the result of time, the past. It has evolved through centuries. And therefore it is the residue of great deal of memory, which is the past. If action is in the active present, please follow this little bit. Then every form of recollection, memory, has no place in action. Right? Am I saying something outrageous? No, I don't think so. You will see it. So let's be clear when we talk about action, which is action is in the present, immediate, and not conditioned by the past. Otherwise, it's not action. If I act as a Hindu or as a Catholic or a Protestant or what you will, I am acting according to a pattern. The pattern which has been established by a particular culture, community, and so on, which is the repetition of words, which is propaganda, and I just act according to what my brain has been conditioned to. So it is not action. I am just then a mechanical machine. And if I act according to a principle or a belief, that principle and belief is the projection of a mind that is living in the past and hopes to achieve that in the future. And therefore it's not action. Right? I don't know if you're following all this. You know, you ask that question, what is love? Which again is a complex and a tremendous thing to find out, to learn about it. There is a difference between being taught and learning. Someone can teach you, inform you, and that leads to a mechanical accumulation of knowledge. Whereas learning, which is constant, never accumulative, you're learning all the time. Now, the word love is associated with sex. That's a fact. We are dealing with facts, not with theories, not with speculations, with what actually is. Then you can do something about it. If you are merely speculating, theorizing, spinning words, then you can't do any much about that. But you can do with what is and go beyond it. So in talking about what love is, it is associated with pleasure, fear, desire, sex, and in that is involved domination, dependency, jealousy, fear, and so on. That's what we call love. In which also, of course, there is tenderness, kindness, and, a little bit of all that. So one asks, you'll have to ask this question, not me only. And find the response, true response to it, not your wish or your prejudice or your what you would like it to be. You have to find out whether love is pleasure, which doesn't mean you deny pleasure. When you look at the beautiful sunset of this evening, that was a delight, that was a pleasure. You can't deny it. Though the priests, the monks throughout the world have said, let me shut my eyes to all that. Because for them, beauty meant pleasure, sex, and so on. So, is love pleasure? Is love a thing of memory, remembrance? I saw that sunset this evening. It was really quite marvelous. With the yellow leaves in the autumn, on the dome, with the fog, on the various dark cypress and the olive. I saw that very clearly, and it was extraordinarily beautiful. And in that, there was great delight, just the sheer enjoyment, the joy of looking at them. What happens there between the joy of seeing that beauty and the pleasure? I don't know if am I communicating with you? Yes, but what's the difference between joy and pleasure and seeing that sunset? What brings about pleasure in that observation? You follow? I see that sunset, but thought comes in and says, I'd like to have that again tomorrow. Doesn't it? I like that to be repeated. Right? The urge for the repetition of that particular delight is pleasure, isn't it? No? You saw that sunset and finished with it. Why carry it over the next day? The carrying it over for the next day is the response of memory, which is thought. Right? Are you following all this? That sunset has left a mark as memory, and thought says, how nice it would be to have it again, repeat it again, tomorrow evening. The demand for the repetition of that particular enjoyment at that moment, the demand for this continuity is brought about by thought, which demands pleasure. I don't know if you see that. No? So one asks, is love pleasure? And it is pleasure when it is associated with sex, or with the idea of God. You know, this division, profane and sacred love. Again, this contradiction, this fragmentation, which all religions have entertained and worship this division. So, in negating what is not love, negating, love is surely not fear, love is not jealousy, love is not contaminated in any way with violence. If you negate all that, through negation the positive is. So is there an action? We must come back to that a little bit. Which is not the repetition of yesterday's memories or conforming to the future pattern. Do you understand my question? Is there an action, if I may make it a little more complex, is there an action which is not born of thought? Because thought is the response of memory. That's simple. Response of accumulated experience as knowledge. And therefore it is the past. Thought is never free. A thought can never be new. Because it is always the response of the past as memory, experience, and knowledge. And knowledge is the past. You can add to it, you can take away from it, but it's always in the past. So, is there an action which is not of the past, which is not the response of thought, because thought has divided the world. Your God, my God, your belief, my belief, your country, my country. You belong to this group and I belong to that group. I am a communist and you are a theist. All the result of thought. So thoughts in its very nature is fragmentary, brings fragmentation. So is there an action which is not of thought, which isn't rooted in thought? I think that's a logical question to ask. Because you see what thought has done in the world. What an awful mess it has made. All the instruments of war are the product of thought. Thought may put a machine to go to the moon, but thought also creates this destructive separation between you and another. Your nationality and his. I follow Marx and you follow what? Nixon. Sorry. Or if you don't like Nixon, somebody else. If thought has produced this terrifying mess in the world, no madman could make the world worse than it is. Then, is there action? Please listen. It's really quite extraordinary to learn about it. Is there an action that is totally new, non-conforming? After all, education may I go on with it? Education makes you conform. The communists do it thoroughly, and the democratic governments do it rather sloppily. But it's the same thing. Conformity is in the very nature of our lives. It has been built into us. And so again we come back. Is there an action which is not conforming to a pattern? And if you are interested in it, is there a way of living which is constantly renewing itself, never repetitive, conforming? Do you know anything about meditation? No. You know, man, throughout the ages, has sought something he called God. Because he said to himself, this world is passing, there's always death, old age, disease, and dying. There must be something more permanent, much more, has the quality of timelessness. And The man began to seek this thing, search it out, learn, find out. Then the priest came in and said, I'll tell you what it is. He became the intermediary, the middleman. And then the trouble began again, deviation. But if one has to find out what it is, and if you find it, that is the source of all action, which is non-contradictory. That means you have to give your life to this, not just a passing phase. You have to give your life because that is life. To find out, learn from yourself. You have to be both the teacher and the disciple. From there you have to find out what this immense reality is. And therefore, one begins understanding the whole structure of oneself as a human being, how he is conditioned. And whether the mind can be free from all conditioning, which means fear, and the pursuit of mere entertaining pleasure, which we call morality. So, in understanding oneself, learning about oneself, not through others, not through philosophers and psychologists, but observing oneself in everything you do, from that intense awareness, the attention then becomes a quality of a mind that has no contradiction. And it's such a mind only that can answer this question and learn from itself. This is why meditation, I'm afraid the Christian world doesn't know it very well, nor the Asiatic mind either. They talk a great deal about it. They're the kind of form of self-hypnosis. But really, to meditate, which means inquire within oneself very consistently, without any choice, without examining what actually is, never escaping from that. Then you'll find out what love is. And also you will know how to live in this world sanely. Right, sir. Like to ask any questions? Or is that enough for this evening? Yes, sir.
Tell us something about meditation, at least as much as we can.
Which one? I couldn't hear, sir.
Could you tell us something about meditation, at least as much as we can understand without any experience?
Would you tell us, would you talk about meditation? If you know nothing about it, it's, it's like talking Greek. Look, I'll put it very simply. If you listen to anything, doesn't matter what it is, the song of a bird, if you listen to your wife or your boy or girlfriend, if you listen to somebody, if your mind is chattering, then you don't listen at all, do you? You just casually hear a few words, but you don't listen with complete attention. And to listen to somebody when your mind is comparing what he's saying with what somebody else has said, you're not listening. If you are translating what he's saying in terms of your own concepts, beliefs, and prejudice, you're not listening. Right? So to listen or to see something very clearly, the mind must be extraordinarily quiet. Right? If you are listening to what the speaker is saying, and if you are really serious, want to find out, you will listen with tremendous attention to learn from yourself, not from the speaker. Now, when you are so listening with attention, your mind is completely quiet. And it's only a very silent mind that can see what truth is, that can see what love is, understand, act, live. So, one realizes this, obviously, this is an obvious fact, that you must have a very quiet mind, absolutely still mind, to see anything very clearly. So, there are various schools all over the world who say, we'll teach you how to be quiet, how to have a still mind. Pay $15 or $100 and we'll show it to you. Do these things and you will get it. In the doing of those things, your mind becomes mechanical, right? And therefore you have lost the quality of a free mind. So all that's implied, and much more, I can't go into it, in what's called meditation, must have a very quiet body and a very sensitive body. And highly disciplined. Now wait a minute, that word discipline is an ugly word. The word discipline means to learn. The word itself means to learn. And when there is a learning going on, the mind becomes extraordinarily sensitive, and therefore that very sensitivity has its own order. Therefore one has to have a very sensitive body, therefore no meat. I won't go into all that with you. No drinking, no smoking, and but to have a mind that is a sharp, clear, therefore highly sensitive. And that sensitivity is intelligence. Now if you can go into all that, do it. You know what it means.
Did you just say that fasting from everything is beginning
What?
meditation? Fasting. You said no eating, no smoking, no drinking.
No, madam, you didn't hear the first part of it. Don't take up fasting as, good Lord. Look, I don't know if you ever fasted. If you have, your body becomes sensitive, doesn't it? The chemical changes going on in the body because you haven't stuffed it with a lot of food. So there is a certain lightness, certain sensitivity. But a stupid mind, I'm not saying your mind is stupid, but a stupid mind fasting and becoming very slightly lightheaded can see marvelous experiences, but is still a stupid mind. No, meditation is something, sirs, which is the most marvelous thing if you know how to go about it. Yes, sir.
Is meditation a reviving or reliving your past?
But
Is meditation a reliving or bringing to the present conscious your past?
is meditation bringing the unconscious, the past, into the present? So what is the unconscious? Don't repeat what the psychologists say. What is the unconscious? And why this division between the conscious and the unconscious? What is below the layers of the conscious? You follow it? You're listening? What's below that? In yourself, when you look at yourself, what is there? Look, one is born in India of a certain class, a Brahmin, and all the tradition, the cultural pressures, the racial memories, the traditions, the motives, beliefs of 3,000, 4,000 years, all that is there stored. Like the Catholic living in this country, or the Protestant in the other country, 2,000 years, the propaganda, the constant, insistent, the savior. You follow? Repeat, repeat, repeat. It's all there. The motives, the urges, the tradition or the lack of tradition or the introducing new tradition, all that is the unconscious, surely. Now, are you interested in all this? How to bring all that out and throw it out? Because if one remains a Hindu or Catholic, it's just a fragment. It's just too silly. When you are human beings, to call oneself a Hindu or this or that is obviously has no meaning anymore, or never had. So the whole thing must be emptied. So the question is consciousness the content of it or independent of it? I don't know if you're interested in all this. You understood? Now, how to bring all that out? I won't complicate the thing because you know that they say through dreams, through analysis, right? May I go on with it? You're not being entertained, are you? Because I don't want to entertain you. You can go to a circus or the cinema. This is a very serious matter. Now, analysis implies the analyzer and the thing analyzed, right? Right? Avanti, please come along with me. Huh? There is the analyzer and the analyzed. The analyzer, when he analyzes, must completely understand each analysis, right? Otherwise, he will carry over his misunderstanding to the next analysis. I don't know if you follow this. Right? You see, I analyze myself. In myself, there is the analyzer and the analyzed. The analyzer is the censor, saying, I'm going to analyze myself, and therefore he separates himself from the analyzed and looks at it. And looks at it with the eyes of the past. Naturally. No? Saying, this should not be, this should be, I ought to have done. Now, is the analyzer different from the analyzed? Obviously not. Right? This you do. So, if the analyzer is the analyzed, and it is, only it's a trick of thought that has separated the two, then all the contents of the so-called unconscious cannot be done through analysis, which is quite the contrary of all the psychologists and so on, analysts. Then through dreams. What is a dream? It is continuance of the day's activity going on, right? Are you following all this?
Is this action you start talking about a continuation of total meditation?
That's right, sir.
You talk about meditation, you come to the point where you can meditate without it's constant. So you obtain this action just by.
That's right, sir. So you see, I won't just go on with this thing. Dreams are really the continuance of the activities of the day, only symbolized, which needs an interpreter. So one asks, need you dream at all? Because if you are dreaming, if it is the continuation of the day's activity, which it is symbolized, then the mind has no rest at all. You follow? The brain has no rest, keeps on and on and on and on.
Are not the day's activities all symbolized also?
Beg pardon?
Are not our day's activities all symbolized also?
Of course, partly. Not, I mean, going to the office is not a symbolic act. It's a beastly act. You have got to go. So I won't go into all this because this requires a great deal of inquiry and really, because the mind and the brain can empty themselves completely of the past. And that's possible only when the mind is completely still. And that is part of this whole business of meditation.
Why are we so afraid?
Big one, sir?
Why are we so afraid of this? Why are people so afraid of this egoism, to be able to forget about that?
What? Why do people? Why are people so afraid? That's good. Yeah. Same thing. So why are people afraid? Their ego, their property, their position, their prestige, their saying, I must fulfill, if I don't feel, I'll be unhappy. Fear. What is fear? Oh, I don't know if you want to go into all that. Isn't it time? Un momento, signore. Let me finish this question, sir. What is fear? You had a physical pain a month ago, bad toothache, or physical pain. And you don't want it to happen again, physical pain. And so you think about it, don't you? The pain, when it came, you did something about it and finished it. But thought says, I don't want it to happen again. Right? Are you following all this? Thought projects what might happen, and from that, thought says, oh, by Joe, I must be careful, I'm frightened. Right? I will die someday, and I'm afraid. If death came instantly, there is no fear. I might die, which is in the future, which is thought says, you follow? So thought creates fear as well as, prolongs fear as well as pleasure. Doesn't it? So can the mind, can there be no fear at all inwardly? You may want to harm me, I may put my arm up or physically resist, but inwardly is there any form of fear? Which means fear exists only when thought thinks about the past, what I have done, what I might not have done, the regrets, the things which are not true, all that. Thinking about them brings on fear. Or thinking about the future, I might lose my job. I must lose my capacity to speak. or I shan't be able to fulfill. I shan't hold my position. So, thought, thinking, brings on fear. Thought thinks about the beautiful sunset yesterday, and what? Again thought. You follow? So, fear and pleasure go together. You cannot possibly avoid fear if you are pursuing pleasure. So to live a life of seeing the beauty of that sunset and finish with it that minute, not carry it over. That means tremendous awareness inwardly, attention, a passion to live that way. That enough, sir? Yes, sir. If meditation can be learned, does one need a teacher? Is that what you are saying, sir? How you can't learn. You can't learn meditation from another. Oh, my Lord. If you can learn from another, then you become his slave. You have to learn by understanding yourself, going into yourself, watching yourself, how you talk, what you do, what you say. Whether you're angry, jealousy, whether you're violent, learn. That means, that you are interested in living, which is only the serious person that lives, not the man who is not serious.